Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? So-called hot earth heating up. We too busy surviving and in a rush. Spreading sweet grass reeds to love a place is not enough. So what we gon' do? Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. I know it's hard to pay attention. Gotta get the money, pay the bills, and rent is tempting to check out. But we gotta come tap in. This our mama that we talking about. The odds are stacked in. So what? Ain't a problem we can't solve. It's time to show up. Time to rise. We seen the fall. Felt the bottom. Tasted the rage and the discouragement. Had to take all the mistreatment and we hurting this. Not an alternative, but to turn and face the world we living in. Baby, it's burning and it's burning quick. But we learning shit. And I'm certain it's worth working to heal up the planet and make a lasting shift. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Same solutions to climate change could help end oppression. Picture no racism, sexism, classism pressing. Down and separated movements taking lives of people. That world we could build it, one that's fully peaceful. Red, black, and green New Deal. Black people's climate agenda, we finna make it real. Transforming water, energy, and land, it's time to heal. Shifting labor, economy, democracy gon' be our legacy. Them corporations hella greedy, why they tryna mask the truth? Frontline communities hit the hardest, look at the proof. How 40 to 70% of COVID deaths is black when we 22% of the pop. Do the math, but there's power in the people, 99 to 1. Simple, not easy, we could win it. We just begun, we facing down history. This humanity's biggest threat, but there's beauty in the battle, baby. It ain't over yet, yeah. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something.
We are living in a new climate reality. Our economic system is designed to minimize the cost of labor while maximizing profit. The value of goods and services is more important than the human beings producing them. This racist and inequitable system stands in the way of a just transition to a renewable energy economy. The climate crisis is highlighting disparities in health, poverty, education, and worker rights. These systemic issues prevent marginalized communities from preparing for the changes happening now. Our agricultural and domestic workers need to be protected from this exclusionary system. Black and Indigenous people want the same access to advancement as anyone else. We want a fair wage that allows us to afford health care and to prepare ourselves for climate disasters that are becoming more frequent and more extreme. A thriving, healthy, and safe community and families are the fruits of our labor. This is why the Movement for Black Lives has created the Red, Black, and Green New Deal Initiative. We will not sacrifice Black lives or accept false solutions that perpetuate unjust social and economic systems. climate justice is racial justice.
Our economy is in a state of flux. Climate change is forcing us to rethink how energy powers our economy. Extreme weather events which are caused by a dependence on fossil fuels have exposed our nation's vulnerabilities. Corporations that have profited from fossil fuels have created and accelerated our current climate crisis. Black and indigenous communities suffer the most and benefit the least from the use of fossil fuels. Disparities in income, education, healthcare, and more have unveiled the long-held realities that systemic racism has led to a disproportionate impact of climate on communities of color. While these disparities are threats to our survival, climate change is a threat multiplier that exacerbates the complex set of issues that marginalized communities already face. Climate injustice is birthed from this toxic blend of overlapping realities. This is why the movement for Black Lives has created the Red, Black, and Green New Deal initiative. We will not sacrifice Black lives or accept false solutions that perpetuate unjust social and economic systems. Climate justice is racial justice.
Our system of government is designed to represent and protect its citizens. We need a fair system that prioritizes not only our civil rights, but our human rights. These include the right to vote in a free and fair election and the right to be involved in any policy decisions that impact our community. The impact of climate change has highlighted the failure of our government to protect the most vulnerable. Too often, these communities are disproportionately Black, brown, and indigenous peoples. Our system of government should work for all of its people. Our government should be proponents of and facilitators of investments in all forms of sustainable, renewable energy. Because Black communities are the most impacted by climate change, any conversation about climate should center Black lives. This is why the Movement for Black Lives has created the Red, Black, and Green New Deal initiative. We will not sacrifice Black lives or accept false solutions that perpetuate unjust social and economic systems. Climate justice is racial justice.
Baby's burning and it's burning quick, but we learn this shit, and I'm certain it's worth working to heal up the planet and make a lasting shift. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we are gonna lift our voices and shift some.
Welcome everyone to Black Literature versus the Climate Emergency. My name is Aya de Leon. I'm here on the faculty of the African American Studies Department at UC Berkeley, and I'm the creative director of the conference. I'm so excited tonight to hear some poetry. We have writers representing roots from the US, the African continent, and throughout the diaspora. And I want to open with a poem by Lucille Clifton called "The Earth is a Living Thing." Is a Black shambling bear ruffling its wild back and tossing mountains into the sea? Is a Black hawk circling the burying ground, circling the bones picked clean and discarded? Is a fish Black blind in the belly of water? Is a diamond blind in the Black belly of coal? Is a Black and living thing? Is a favorite child of the universe? Feel her rolling her hand in its kinky hair. Feel her brushing it clean. Ashe, thank you to our ancestor poetically, Lucille Clifton. I just want to say it's such a joy to be here today. We have an all-star panel of poets and artists for you here tonight. And, you know, these are the times of the climate crisis. Folks are dealing with all kinds of technical challenges. Our sister Anaya Butler is coming to us from Oakland, California, USA, Ohlone land, and is dealing with PG&E outages. For anyone who doesn't know, that's the local power company, which has many shady practices that we need to solve with this here climate justice we're fighting for. So she's going to be joining us with her camera off, but we'll edit her in a new version with full video for the final conference. But if there are moments where she comes in as a voice with no moving box, you'll know why. So let's get into it. I want to introduce our host for the panel, who is my favorite MC. Coco Pela is a hip hop and alt R&B soul performing and recording artist and cultural organizer whose work centers around the liberation of all people and protection of the planet and resourcing African heritage people, particularly women and girls. She is the creator of Black Gold Movement. Coco served as the director of hip hop and climate justice at Youth vs. Apocalypse, YVA, a youth-driven Bay Area climate justice organization. She was selected by Women's Earth Alliance to join their fall 2021 U.S. Women's Accelerator Program. Her most recent audiovisual release, Pretty Girls, aims to redistribute the wealth and power of beauty throughout the Black Girl Magic diaspora, and she is currently working on her solo project set to drop in 2022. Please give it up for Coco Pela. I'm gonna give her some Zoom love.
Thank you so much for that amazing intro. I appreciate it very much. And it's so good to be with you all today. I think mainly because, you know, folks of African heritage have been resisting all types of oppression throughout the ages through, you know, art, through language, through music, through generosity and compassion and love. And so I'm just really excited in this moment as we face the climate crisis to just get to behold the brilliance and ferocity and bravery and creativity of these poets, these climate justice activists of the African diaspora. So, yeah, I mean, that's really what I have to say. I wish we were in person, but we know, you know, we're in these COVID times and we're in this pandemic. So it's not quite the right moment for me to do a call and response with you all, but I know you're going to be inspired and touched and changed by the pieces of these artists. So without further ado, I would really love to bring up our first poet, activist, writer. She's a published writer. She is an incredible comrade in the liberation movement. I've had definitely the privilege to work and learn from her. Her name is Anaya Butler, and she's coming all the way from Oakland, California. Please give it up. Give it up for Anaya Butler.
Thank you so much, Coco, for that wonderful introduction. So hi, everyone. My name is Anaya Butler. I use she, her pronouns. I'm 15 years old. I'm from East Oakland, California, occupied Chochenyo Ohlone territory. I serve as the coordinator of the Hip Hop and Climate Justice Initiative program that Coco founded at Youth vs. Apocalypse, a Bay Area-based group led by predominantly frontline youth fighting for climate justice. But before all of that, I am a poet and a spoken word poet. This poem is titled Where Pretty Rose Once Lived. Listen to the cries of the ice while being absorbed by the warm mouth of the sea, and to the hollow screams of the trees in the forest while their arms explode in the raging hot waves of the earth telling us something. I do not feel, I fear. I fear that people won't start to feel in time before the rocks cave in and the sea slowly trickles onto our land. The people melt into the cracks of the concrete where Pretty Rose once lived. They don't hear the little girl crying because she can't go outside, play with her friends, go on a trip because she can't breathe, or the last bird flapping its wings into a void that is unavoidable. My realisticness mistaken for negativity. It is not negative to say people will die, animals will die, plants will die if we don't do something. It is the truth. We are already dying. Our piece of our flesh disintegrates into the polluted atmosphere as we continue to lie and deny that we are heading towards an end that has already started. My honesty mistaken for disrespect. Our world has been constructed on hatred, which has bred a culture of oppression, which has birthed our greatest threat yet, which I will not say because it takes over my mind every day. Learn, speak, educate, repeat, this thing controls what I think. Stop. Think. Hope draining out of my pores and filling into the cracks of the concrete where a pretty rose once lived. The spitting image of my fears, the ground giving up on my feet, the air giving up on my lungs, the water giving up on my throat, earth giving up on us. But we gave up a long time ago. How can we say something is fake, but we see it every day? How can we say something is not there when we inhale it, we drink it, we eat it, and say nothing is wrong? We want to see our greatest threat. We want to see what is causing us pain. We want someone to blame. Look in the mirror. This reflection, filling into the cracks of the concrete where a pretty rose once lived. Thank you.
Please give it up wherever you are. You could snap, you could clap, you could jump up.
Wow.
You could make a sound.
Wow.
Woohoo! Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Anaya. Let's just take a deep breath in. Or whatever you need for yourself. Deep breath out. It was so powerful. That was Anaya Butler coming to you from East Oakland, California, unceded Chochenyo Ohlone territory. And up next, we're going to welcome representing Gambia all the way from Brazil, currently in Brazil. We are going to welcome Kweku up to the stage. Please give it up. Show some.
Hey, y'all. Good evening. This is Kweku. I am a postgraduate Zell Fellow at the University of Michigan. I'm currently working on 2 book projects, and I write about climate, especially as it intersects with West African spirituality. I was privileged to grow up in Gambia, Ghana, and the US, and fishing is a huge part of these communities. But sadly, as is the case with capitalism, now a lot of multinational Western fishing corporations actually overfish in West African waters. And to make matters worse, climate change has caused a lot of changes to the migration of these fish, which further depletes fishing populations. So I wrote this poem to highlight this crisis and also to honor the fishing traditions that are central to my ancestry that are now being threatened. So here is Saltwater Demands a Song. The moon's gray whisks morning waves. Groundswells glide and trade this silver snakeskin for sunrise. And we're up, my crew and I. We've been up, we've wagered the winds, traced the tides, combed and poured over our nets, nursing any tangles or weathered gaps. Our boats wait ready, licked in kente hues, names like happiness, good luck, Nyamijia, and Big Catch are branded onto their still-banked hulls, buoyed at the heels of palm trees. We've come to shore singing, clapping, humming, saltwater demands a song. We owned a measure of the earth's edge and funked with the tide chasing it during each morning catch before the barges came. Before the big barges came and scraped our reefs clean. We now vie with them for the final fish. It's a butterfish. We haven't netted any guitar fish or sandy grouper in months. It has to be a butterfish. They've been our village's anchor since when I was a child, learning to fish. I asked my father if the water below us was dead. He says the water is only as dead as the bodies beneath and alive as the bodies above. He reached down, offering us a palmful of salt water. We both drank. Swear to keep this balance. These aren't the first ships coming to starve us. They won't be the last. Even our butterfish knows this, and he's merciful. He's promised we won't even have to catch him. He'll come to us grinning and prideful, and we'll scoop him into a bucket of salt water and bring him with us to shore. We'll feed him and groom him, trimming his airy whiskers. We'll dress him in purple kente like an ohene. We'll make festivals in his honor, make love in his honor, and name our children thus. And the day he passes, we'll round up all the village families and lead them with us out to sea. And with our boats, we'll blockade the barges and bury our last butterfish. No casket, no pyre, just salt water and a song. Thank you.
Yes, make some noise for Kweku, please. Unmute, show your beautiful face, snap, clap, jump up, dance. I'm gonna just take a deep breath between each set because I need to like get grounded, absorbing all that beauty and intelligence. Okay. Ooh, thank you. Okay, so next up, please give a warm, delighted and excited welcome to Kevin.
Thank you for that introduction, Coco. I appreciate you. And Kweku and Anaya, such beautiful work. I feel really honored to follow y'all up and just to be here today. My name is Kevin Ipopo. I use all pronouns. Currently based just outside of Portland, Oregon, in a town called Tigard. That is the traditional lands of Kalapuya, Alfalai, and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. I'm a youth organizer, I'm a poet, and just trying to do my part in the work, right? I have two pieces to share with y'all today. The first, I think, explores the relationship that I've had with the ocean as someone who's of Samoan and Black American descent. And the second more clearly explores the relationship between like my experience and climate change. The first piece is called The Water Talks. The water talks. She calls you in slowly, whispering in your ear before thundering into your soul with crashes and chants that echo the story of you. But only if you can swim. You see, my father doesn't know how to swim. Like many Black men, he has become the joke, the stereotype, the typical non-swimming Negro, which is to say he was tongueless near the shore. He was deaf at the ocean. He couldn't speak water. Saltwater serenades were always muffled by generations of his Blackness that had settled into the blackness of the Atlantic floor. Putting your head underwater becomes difficult when you're being swallowed by the sounds of your ancestors' mourning. Bones gifted to the water, she took these bones and gave them peace. Let them rest in the sand so that they may look upwards towards future generations. She took their skin and softened the scars, massaging it into foam so that they may settle back on the shores that were once home. She took their tongues and set them free, crafting waves so that they may speak to those left, those stolen, those resting in the water. The water talks. She scolds you for your arrogance, says, "Sweet child, you know damn well I ain't raised you to act like that. Come on in this water. It ain't gonna hurt you." Yet, despite this reassurance, it always took my father so much effort to get into the water. He had grown harsh, rugged, and afraid. A lifetime of Black Americanism had left little room for anything beyond living. Systemic oppression silenced his imagination for liberation and replaced it with two goals: be Black, survive. Be Black, survive. Be Black, survive. How could he stay afloat in the ocean when he was still bound to the weight of his ancestors' chains? Submitting to one of your people's largest graveyards doesn't coincide with the goals, no matter how sweet Big Mama's voice is. And so he grew to be tongueless near the shore, deaf at the ocean, unable to speak water, not because it was easier, but because it's what he had to do to survive. You can't risk drowning in generations of trauma when you're already drowning in generations of trauma. I've barely got my head above water now. My eyes and nose rise above the surface, enough to look upwards and breathe freely. My heart and ears submerged, enough to be held by the water and to hear my forebear's guidance. The water talks. She shares with me the same knowledge that my people have always known. I will set you free. This next piece is called Of the Earth, but it's a working title. A hydro flask covered in bright, quirky adhesives reading, "Good vibes only. It's wine o'clock. Proud fur parent. Black Lives Matter. Save the bees. Black Lives Matter. Save the bees." This small stainless steel testament to environmental saviorship, boasting proudly, loudly, colorfully, Black Lives Matter, save the bees. And I begin to think, if a hand wrapped around this bottle knows that it is the same hand that swats at those bees looking for rest. The same one that clutches its purse as I walk by, the same one that rolls up the windows, locks the doors, that calls for help, whether it's me or the bee looking for rest. See, it's easy to say that you love something, that it matters when that something gives you life. When that something blooms so beautifully, creating breath in the midst of singed earth and broken neighborhoods. It's easy to say you want to save them when you can steal the flowers without ever seeing the pollen, when you can steal the skin without ever seeing the pollen. Easy to proclaim it matters when the honey you claim to have discovered is sweeter on your taste buds, like you can't taste the labor it took to produce, like you can't taste the trauma present in each drop. Purse, tightly clutched, hand firmly swatting, keeping your treasures safe with someone else's family name on their underside. You simply call this a protective style. Yet you are unfamiliar with what it is that we protect. You are unable to see our roots beneath the concrete, left to wonder how we find a way to blossom between each small crack. You do not see our garden. You do not see our community. You see development. You see beneath the roots into pits of tar and oil. You see red lines and trampled fields. You see things to burn, to exploit, remove, and condense and mold until it becomes thin, malleable plastic draped across the front of your small stainless steel testament to environmental saviorship reading, Black Lives Matter, save the bees. And this is how we know the climate crisis and anti-Black racism are synonymous. So we call this work justice. And in turn, you call it aggression. You call it suspect. You call me a threat, a bee a threat, the same way you call a cell phone a gun. And as the sky collapses, we have no recourse for safety. Stinger and skin, a warrant to be called armed and dangerous, a demand to comply, as if we weren't the ones in imminent danger. Any method of self-defense, an immediate death sentence, leaving my mother wondering if I truly felt that that stain was worth my face on these t-shirts with angel wings. We never wanted to die. We wanted to breathe, and to feel our breath give life. Thank y'all.
Y'all make some noise, show your face, show your love. Woo!
Yes.
I got chills and caught the misties a couple times. That was Kevin Ipopo, and that was so beautiful. It really, you know what that took me to? It really reminded me a lot of some of the writings in that book, Undrowned, by Alexis Pauline Gumbs, and especially that first piece about the water. Thank you. Ooh. Oh my goodness. I'm like, am I going to make it to the end? That was so powerful. I'm going to take another breath so that I can do what I came here to do. I'm curious. We're going to just do a quick little lightning round. So those of the poets who are here with us, if you want to unmute and show your face again, I just want to pose a quick little question and invite y'all in to shout out, what stood out to you about those four pieces, words, emotions that were conjured, imagery. What did it make you feel? What questions came to your mind? And y'all can just popcorn style in.
Multitudes. Blackness is so expansive.
I was really drawn to Kevin's metaphor of the ocean having a tongue and the language of the ocean and being able to speak that, because there's so many different fluencies that water sort of brings up, especially within Black history, ancestry, and spirituality. So I really held on to that.
I really enjoyed how all of it just deals with the intersection of the crisis, and how we as Black people have just been really moving through those intersections and experiencing numerous kinds of oppressions at those intersections. And yeah, just the way you all are so aware of it. It was really striking.
Yeah, I just want to say, Anaya, I really love your work. Really great to be in a space with you again. And I always feel so much life after you perform. Kweku, I really, really appreciate the nuance of your piece. I think, at least in my experience, I felt like a really large disconnect between Black Americans and nature, and people really push that narrative. And so the way you express traditional practice and all of that beauty and how it's being threatened, I think adds another layer to something that I'm not always able to connect with. So I thought that was beautiful.
I love how so many poems just featured water. Especially even thinking Kevin's in connection to Kweku's poem. There again, these pervasive narratives that Black people are afraid of water, or don't like being around water, or not in some way connected to water, and that's just so false and so antithetical to so many of our experiences. So I thank you for speaking to that.
Yes. Okay. Without further ado, I would love for y'all to give, I was going to say a warm, but I'm feeling the ocean right now. So, let's give a deep and vast welcome to Bernard Ferguson. And they're going to tell you a little bit more about themselves.
Hey, y'all. I'm Bernard Ferguson. I use they them pronouns, and I am a Bahamian from the Bahamas. I am currently in New York City, in Lenape-Hoking, which is the unceded territory of, that I'm aware of, Lenape and Canarsie, but I know that list isn't complete. I am working on a book about climate, the climate crisis on small island states, and I'm trying to connect it to the gender equality and abolition and multiple movements happening here in the US, and try to explain how they're interconnected. You can't solve climate change without abolishing the police state of the US. I'm going to read two poems, one by me and one not by me. So the first poem, which is mine, is climate change is essentially this accumulation of unaccountability for numerous centuries, and so I've been doing some work to think about accountability, to tap into the language around accountability. How do we hold a nation? How do we hold numerous nations, many developed nations that have partaken and exercised and levied intense violence and exploitation across what people call the global South, even though I don't like that term. I've been thinking about how do you hold these places accountable that have never been held accountable in their entire existence. I've also been thinking about accountability on the personal scale, right? We don't have accountability on the global scale, and we kind of don't have it inter-community. I mean, we have people working on new languages, like in terms of how do we seek justice from one another instead of constantly. Maybe we can do it restoratively. Maybe we can do it transformatively. So we're getting these new lexicons that hold each other accountable. But kind of wide, by and large, in this country, accountability is kind of foreign. Here in the U.S. specifically, accountability is a take that a quality that's hard to find. And so this poem is some of my thinking, or me trying to make a metaphor out of all of that. Why make promises at all? Why make promises at all if, when the erosion erodes, there will be nothing left of the roots? Not mine, not yours, nor that of the grandfather redwood, older than my life, older than the tally of years and lives that came to make mine. Atrocities happen in the world of minutia, a few 100,000 by the second. A child stomps victorious atop the head of the daffodil. The rain disappears suddenly from one coordinate and then reappears, fused with the rain at another. The foreign cells metastasize in silence until the tragedy is terminal. The silence, that's the problem. Right before you begin the journey across the grassland, coins in your pocket, blood in your heart, you'd think they'd tell you the truth. No one has to answer for anything. Someone decided death was the one bone we share, and we have been bending toward it all together ever since. At least spike your dopamine. At least deplete what you cannot protect. Your narrative rivals the planet's narrative because they are the same. Despite our fortune, eventually ruin arrived. So the second piece I'm going to read real quick is not by me, and it is by the person that like partially occasioned this meeting, June Jordan. This event taking place in partnership with the Black Studies Department at Berkeley, where June established Poetry for the People. So I really wanted to read a piece by her. This is a piece that is helping me think about climate change. I think June was so aware of the intersections of oppressions and how they tell the similar story of white supremacy and exploitation across the planet. And I think she's really good at thinking about these things intersectionally in poems. She's able to communicate how clear she sees overlaps, even within her own body, how the oppression she has felt and the way she has moved through the world has informed her about this global scale, these things happening at the global scale. And so in some of my teaching, I've been trying to figure out how to write about climate change. We have to think personally and globally, and to see what's happening to us is also happening on the global scale. And this poem that she wrote, Poem About My Rights, is so wonderful at that. It's so wonderful at speaking to the intersections, both in the body and at the global scale. I think she was also aware that climate is, I think she was hyper aware of climate already, like the climate that she was moving through, the political climate. And I think if climate change was more prevalent, or if it was as widespread as it was, as it is right now, when she wrote this poem, I'm 100% sure climate change would directly be in this poem. But because of the way climate change intersects with everything, it's still in here. Poem About My Rights. I love this poem so much, and I hope y'all love it too. Even tonight, and I need to take a walk and clear my head about this poem, about why I can't go without changing my clothes, my shoes, my body posture, my gender identity, my age, my status as a woman alone in the evening, alone on the streets, alone not being the point. The point being that I can't do what I want to do with my own body because I am the wrong sex, the wrong age, the wrong skin. And suppose it was not here in the city, but down on the beach or far into the woods, and I wanted to go out there by myself, thinking about God or thinking about children or thinking about the world, all of it disclosed by the stars and the silence. I could not go, and I could not think, and I could not stay there alone as I need to be alone because I can't do what I want to do with my own body. And who the hell set things up like this? And in France, they say if the guy penetrates but does not ejaculate, then he did not rape me. And if after stabbing him, if after screams, if after begging the bastard, and if even after smashing a hammer to his head, if even after that, if he and his buddies fuck me after that, then I consented and there was no rape because finally you understand. Finally, they fucked me over because I was wrong. I was wrong again to be me, being me where I was. Wrong to be who I am, which is exactly like South Africa, penetrating into Namibia, penetrating into Angola. And does that mean, how do you know if Victoria ejaculates? What will the evidence look like? The proof of the monster jackboot ejaculation on Black land. And if after Namibia, and if after Angola, and if after Zimbabwe, and if after all my kinsmen and women resist, even to self-immolation of the villages, and if after that we lose nevertheless, what will the big boys say? Will they claim my consent? Do you follow me? We are the wrong people of the wrong skin on the wrong continent. And what in the hell is everybody being so reasonable about? And in the Times this week, back in 1966, the CIA decided they had this problem, and the problem was a man named Nkrumah. So they killed him. And before that, it was Patrice Lumumba. And before that, it was my father on the campus of my Ivy League school. And my father afraid to walk into the cafeteria because he said he was wrong. The wrong age, the wrong skin, the wrong gender identity. And he was paying my tuition. And before that, it was my father saying I was wrong, saying that I should have been a boy because he wanted one, a boy, and that I should have been lighter skinned, and that I should have had straighter hair, and that I should not be so boy crazy, but instead I should just be one, a boy. And before that, it was my mother pleading plastic surgery for my nose and braces for my teeth and telling me to let the books loose, to let them loose. In other words, I am very familiar with the problems of the CIA and the problems of South Africa and the problems of Exxon Corporation and the problems of white America in general and the problems of the teachers and the preachers and the FBI and the social workers and my particular mom and dad. I am familiar with the problems because the problems turn out to be me. I am the history of rape. I am the history of rejection of who I am. I am the history of the terrorized incarceration of myself. I am the history of battery assault and limitless armies against what I want to do with my mind and my body and my soul. And whether it's about walking out at night or whether it's about the love that I feel, or whether it's about the sanctity of my vagina or the sanctity of national boundaries or the sanctity of my leaders or the sanctity of each and every desire that I know from my personal and idiosyncratic and indisputably single and singular heart, I have been raped because I have been wrong. The wrong sex, the wrong age, the wrong skin, the wrong nose, the wrong hair, the wrong need, the wrong dream, the wrong geographic, the wrong sartorial I. I have been the meaning of rape. I have been the problem everyone seeks to eliminate by forced penetration with or without the evidence of slime. But let this be unmistakable. This poem is not consent. I do not consent to my mother, to my father, to the teachers, to the FBI, to South Africa, to Bed-Stuy, to Park Avenue, to American Airlines, to the hard-on idlers on the corners, to the sneaky creeps in cars. I am not wrong. Wrong is not my name. My name is my own, my own, my own. And I can't tell you who the hell set things up like this, but I can tell you that from now on, my resistance, my simple and daily and nightly self-determination may very well cost you your life. Thank you all for having me.
Come on, scream, show your face, make some noise, shake it off. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yep. Yeah, I think that the silence is really important, especially these wordsmiths, they pack so much into these short little, lengths of time. We cover so much distance and so much complexity, so many intersections. So let's just take a moment to let it all land. Take a breath. Thank you, Bernard. Up next, I want y'all to give it up for Ashia Ajani. And they're going to tell you all about themselves, the work that they do, and their amazing art. So give it up.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Coco. Thank you to everybody who read. I mentioned this, in our popcorn, but I think one of my favorite things, especially about being in a space like this and listening to eco poetry, and specifically listening to Black eco poetry, is how varied our experiences with it, but also the things that bind us are so powerful. And in my own practice, I'm a poet, I'm a storyteller, I'm an educator. I think holding those multitudes is what's so important to me, especially as an educator and especially teaching Black youth in an era that is so violent, not only in terms of anti-Blackness, but also in the ways that we engage with the environment, and how those two things are also actually very overlapping and very similar. So I'm very grateful for this space, just to hear so many awesome words and to hear from folks that I've admired for such a long time, but also to just be a part of a network that is aware and is really, trying to think through, grieve through, work through the layered experience of environmental and climate injustice as felt by the Black diaspora. I have 3 poems for you all, 2 a little bit longer, 1 short. This first one that I'm going to read is very much about my family, and a lot of my poetry is about my family. We are migrants. We are part of the Black Exodus. And when I think about my family, especially, I think about so many of the sacrifices and the choices that they had to make as laborers, as bodies that were viewed just for labor, in order to make a way for me to exist and for my cousins to exist. And so I'm so grateful for them, but also so mournful because so many people in my family had their lives cut short because of that horrible relationship between extraction of resources and extraction of labor. So these poems are for them. First one is called Creation. In the beginning, there was my great mother and my great mother's stockpot. Its capacious abyss brothing. A fist emerged first, then a heartbeat. The men bubbled from it unscathed. A girl emerged spitting soap from their lips. We all sprung forth steeped in culture, the soft fat of ancestry clinging to granny's good broth. My ancestors laughed in the face of white gods. My ancestors were brave. Some were cowards. Some became cruel in their apathy. Some mistook the white cassava flesh of their palms as transcendence. My ancestors survived, the only wound that mattered. My people organized, got blamed for doing it poorly, got blamed for doing it well, got blamed for misspells, their own deaths, had our history ripped from our tongues and fed back to us, sterilized. We made tough choices. We took jobs in factories working to extract and distill natural resources into unrecognizable fuel until we too became unrecognizable. We got cancer from working in sludge, bone disease, emphysema. We lived on toxic land. We got our land seized. We seized land. We didn't get treatment. We didn't get monetary compensation. Sometimes they made documentaries about it, about us. Awareness is the best thing we could hope for. Sometimes we laughed because we deserved to, and Lord knows we needed it. Some of us had cookouts. Some of us played spades. Some of us got to second base under the pine trees in the backyard with the boy with a mouthful of metal. Some of us smoked herb. Some of us didn't want to get our hair wet. Some of us dried out, you dig. Some of us danced until we sweated out all that liquor. Then all that was left was to return to memory. Some of us grew gardens. Some of us walked barefoot on damp soil. Some of us grew our hair long and locked. Some of us raised healers. Too many of us needed healing. Some of us gossiped, became grandmas and aunties, stirred our own soup pots, re-spirited the cauldron, kept each other close. At the end, there was darkness, and nothing light could slice through it. It was meant to hold the everything of all things, and thus it was safe. The word came, and the word was black and good and bountiful, and thus it was safe. Creatures of biblical proportions, new gods leapt from the abyss. A wide open womb brought forth black earth, and thus it was safe, was all guarded, all gate kept, all sweet soil cascading into oblivion. That oblivion, a black bruise mending the smacked around earth. Even the dust it left behind was kept safe. Even as we watched the midnight sky fall from its heavenly border, we were kept safe. In the wet, in the sorrow, in the quiet space, in all that blood and turmoil. Every dusk-swept day, I thank a Black woman's rage for ensuring my survival. This next one is called Durag. Forward moving, we always turn back time. Like ocean built of body, memory, the God of good grease paints follicles holy, and those waves, Lord, those ancient waves, facilitate a brother's boldest baptism, wipe me down, a litany of all the good that came to stay. The Atlantic remembers every part of Black anatomy, like a curse, a calling. Those cold waters shift and stagnate under a cotton polyester blend. They never got to lay claim to the water, but by God, how they dammed, privatized, seized, overfished, extracted, deregulated, poisoned, commodified, pulled the cloth from the crease quick, like a run in a stocking, ripped the color clean from scalp. An instantaneous divide reminds what can be taken and what can be absolved. Later, a Black boy will fit his mouth around the word rage, hold it behind his tongue, ferment his brooding into savage. Watch him pull bones from the riverbed, casting wide mess drenched in cotton coagulations. Pray for summer rain to rinse all these trifling transgressions clean. Any flood breaks a bullets back, but does not siphon the blood back into body. Baby, I can't help but enshrine you as a vengeful sea god, drowning in all that drip, all that wet, all that sheen. This last poem is entitled Life Cycle, and it basically is kind of like a summation of all of my frustrations with industrialization. America is a factory. My father built security cameras from discarded junk phones, their cracked screens, a subterranean stained glass, burgeoning blessings. Come one, come all if you dare. He welds a fine line between surveillance and security. My father is no stranger to a gun. My father believes in a self-proclaimed rapture. The hills have eyes. My father's lens thickens as his vision differs. At the end of the world, he hopes to patent his despair. America is a landfill. Underwater, blood-blind brine is soured. My neighbors pour the leftover liquid from a pot of greens into his garden. Billowing green stink arises, stains room for ripening. Black folks despise waste. The last drops of Crown Peach in the dog's water bowl for taste. The plastic bags under my auntie's kitchen cabinet, exceptional cushioning for our endangered shadows. Never afforded the softness of packing peanuts. Is the soul biodegradable? Can it be upcycled? At least we still have Granny's house. Wrap your apparitions in polyester codes, send them out to ocean. May they forever exist in sedimentary purgatory, floating on. In this sense, we never rest. In this sense, pollution profits. And won't these white folks come and pick up the damn trash? America is a false idol. All my people iconoclasts. Look out the window at all of that. God damn, what is he protecting? Ain't nothing here ours but scraps of metal, melted all down, why don't you? Some homes are worth less than their copper pipes, this metallic stew pot boiling over. My ancestors bartered their gold teeth for green, earned heart disease and curdle cream dreams instead as the planet warms another degree. Mama says my degree won't save me. Exposed cash really does rule everything around me. I wonder, what rich bones can broth a new vanguard? Nigga, can I please get a witness? America is a malignant tumor. Oh, how I long to capitalize this intrusion into our collective heartbeat, beating away at the floorboards of good senses until the spirits rattle around, pushing debilitating daisies. Memory stinging nettle unsilenced. Watch the good earth reclaim clunkers for cash. Nostalgia makes a mockery of presence. Open face sores on my uncle's knuckles attribute to this nation's success. I won't bullshit you. He reeks of burnt sienna and ember. It all reeks of pyrated pyrite, fool's gold. I talk too much about my grandmother's hands because they threshed this country. Great migration granny, built Ford tough, a gorgeous ghost gnarled into graphics. Look closely. You can see flakes of calluses soldered to your car's lithium battery. I talk too much about my grandmother's hands because they became cracked by bleach ammonia, everything meant to whiten and purge bacteria. She passed down her genealogy of anguish, lead hardened blood, black lung coughing up embattled blues. Wasn't the Tin Man once chopping through scorched earth? My gut is filled with vengeful microorganisms. Today and every day beyond grief, I throw my griefs against any surface in need of shine. America, define yourself a country exactly. My offering, a knotted bellyache of sadness born beyond a distant horizon, manifested. The embers of our lost selves tumbling across the West Coast. Even the mountains seem to collapse with sadness. The spine of the uninherited earth curved like that of a funeral wailer. An assembly line aggravating access. All that rust corroding our good sense. Riddle me this. How can I be well when my lawn is always burning? Thank you.
Make some noise. Yes. So talk to me. Bernard and Ashia just dropped some major gems and really poured their souls out. One of the things in this last piece that Ashia shared was that stood out to me was, is the soul biodegradable? And all that followed that. What stood out to y'all? Words, phrases, how you felt, questions that popped up in your head, reactions?
I wrote down this quote. I don't know if I got it right though. Every dust swept day, I thank a Black woman's rage for ensuring my survival. Come on. Like, wow. Wow.
If there's anything else that y'all want to share, what touched you, what came to mind, visuals, and those of you who are watching at home, feel free to jot things down, to speak out with those who you're sitting with, who you're sharing the space with, or even if you're alone, you can speak out, what's going through your mind and body right now.
I think what stood out to me also was this like naming of ancestors, the intimacy that like brings. And like the listing that like, it sort of like brings to mind this idea of eternity, like as long as like legacy continues, we do have this like idea of like a Black eternity within our present. So thank you so much for that.
Kevin, I saw you open your mouth. I'm like, what you gonna say? What's going on? Let us hear you sigh. You don't even have to say nothing.
Yeah, I just like... always so many feelings. Ashia, when you perform, I'm just like, as soon as like in the beginning, there was my great mother and her stock pot. I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for every part of this, but I'm here for it and I can't wait. And just the entire time I was so invested in like, so it's very seldom that I like hit a point where I have no reflection and I'm just like in awe, and I'm at that point, and I feel you, and I see you, and I'm so thankful.
Ooh.
This is my first time that I've read with Bernard, and I just have to say that I'm so thankful and so blessed. It's just so your words are so powerful. And not only that, but the cadence with which you speak, it draws people in. And you just have this way about you of like, I don't even think it's like commanding. It's just inviting people, to really listen and to take things in. And it's not like, you're telling us stuff, like you're dropping like some real knowledge, but like it really is an invitation. It's like, I'm sharing this with you. It's like up to you to really like, take in what I'm saying and what I'm dishing out. So thank you.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh my goodness. I'm like, I need to have a good cry when this is done. I'm gonna have a good cry. I'm gonna go grab my auntie's hand or something. Also, Kweku, when you were just saying a Black eternity, I'm like, I have to write that down. Y'all, even when you're giving each other appreciations, y'all are still spitting that stuff. Beautiful. Oh, and Kevin, you said, I'm not ready, but I'm here for it. I love that. Okay, so this is a really exciting moment for me. I'm very, very nosy. People who know me know that I'm nosy. It's an annoying thing, but when you host a panel, it comes in handy. Okay, so at this moment, we're gonna just go around and ask a couple questions. I've written them down, so forgive me if you see me like looking. I am definitely reading because I get nervous and I'm very long-winded, as you can tell. So we gotta write it down. So today's conference is highlighting so many different types of writing to address the climate emergency. Why did you each pick poetry? And some of y'all talked about the other modes or modalities that you work with, but talk to us about if you also have, if you work in other forms or modalities.
No, Anaya, go for it.
So sorry. But yeah, I don't think I really like picked poetry. I've been writing poetry since I was 8, and I'm 15. And so as an 8-year-old, I really didn't know much about poetry. I just knew I was writing it because of, my parents and stuff. But I think I continue to use poetry as, part of my advocacy work is because it's like, it keeps me sane and calm. It's like a way that I can process what I'm doing in that moment. And as a whole, what type of world I live in. And I feel like, poetry is just a way to understand the understandable. And I think that, that's why, I continue to write it. But yeah, it just overall keeps me sane because I would probably be crazy without it. And other work that I do, I do a lot of different work. I'm an organizer, so like I organize actions and stuff. I work with youth, my peers, to help them, learn different creative writing skills and also just different creative skills in general. I participate like in different panels and, speaking at different type of events and stuff like that to just try my best to help others learn more about, the climate justice movement and ways they can get involved. And I also just educate myself as much as I can so I can, learn more about how I can, improve my work as an organizer and, maximize the opportunity I have as an organizer, to the full benefit of the communities that I'm fighting for. But yeah.
Dope. And Anaya, will you pass it to, Ashia was already, all right. I'm gonna just.
Yeah, sorry about that, y'all. Every time I hop on Zoom, my cat wants to be a part of it. So you might see a little fluffy thing like popping in every so often. But before I really, that's not true. Like, so I've been writing like ever since I kind of like Anaya, like since I was like really, really young. It was like a way, I was an only child. So I didn't really grow, like I like learned how to just kind of like talk to myself essentially. And writing was a way for me to like talk to myself and entertain myself. But I think before I really started, I guess, like doing like the poetry thing, like really seriously, I was a scientist. And I was specifically doing stuff around agroecology and food justice. And I just this is like probably gonna be a funny thing to hear because not everybody says this, but I really love reading scientific articles. And a recent study actually came out that showed that poetry is one of the best mediums in cultivating empathy. I will send this to you because I'm seeing like intrigued faces, but and especially around topics that have to do with environment and climate change, it's a way for people to access that feeling and specifically like the human-based impacts of climate change and of environmental and ecological impacts. Because so much jargon around climate change is so indigestible for so many people and can be so alienating, having that like sort of storytelling background and having that sort of like poetic engagement is really useful for folks in order to like, just like really break down and really think about, like what are even if you're not seeing it, because I think that's like a big issue for a lot of people with climate change is like, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. If it's not happening in my community, like it's not really happening. But to hear people, like give that testimony and say, this is what is happening and this is what is ongoing and what has been ongoing, it's really powerful for a lot of people. And so that's one of the reasons that I push poetry like so much because of that sort of like empathetic quality, but also like it's a way for me too to connect with my ancestors. As like a Black diasporic person, I don't know where I'm from, in Africa. I have some vague idea, but I know that so many of my ancestors are griots and storytellers. And for me to tap into that tradition really helps me feel more connected too.
Woo! Come through.
Speaking about ancestral connection, I think that's also where my foray into poetry began. For me, literature was never like just like words on a page. It was always something that was like spoken and kind of like, stories, folk tales, myths, and things of that nature. So my poetry tries to reclaim this idea of orality. And I think that poetry is a good medium because you can memorize things that are repeated. So I like to play a lot with like repetition in my work and also trying to highlight the various like mythologies because mythology in West Africa is so deeply tied to ecology. So it's like you're sort of like every myth kind of like highlights the centrality of nature to a people's story, to, sustenance, to wealth, all of these different things. So I think that's like my like one of the biggest inspirations for writing poetry. And now I think I'm also trying to connect dance to ecology, which is something that has been fun because a lot of like the dances that we do are tied to seed time, harvest, and all of that. Some like Black movement contains so many other ramifications that are just beyond, the beat or, just like the dance circle. Like, what does it mean for us to interrogate Black movement as a system within itself and as a means to an end of cultural sustenance and also like a respect for the environment?
What? Y'all, I can't type fast enough to get y'all a job. I'm so glad we have this. Ooh. Okay, recorded. Okay, I'm done. Please hop in.
Oh, I mean, first of all, like to echo you, Coco, like, damn, like, oof. Also that study, like, some of the work I'm working on is like figuring out how to communicate in language and argue why poetry is key for people to be writing. So that study sounds amazing. Y'all are amazing. I think poetry, I feel like I just recently started writing poetry, maybe like 6 years ago, right? And I'm 30 now, and I got into it because of being an immigrant here and like not grubbing up against the different oppressions of being like Black and immigrant in America, and I needed an outlet. And through that outlet, like it is actually through poetry that I found my way to like talking about climate change and thinking about climate change as it pertains to like the Caribbean and the Black experience. And I got to some of my thinking on like accountability and some of my thinking on the history of like nations and colonization through language, through poetry, just looking up words and etymology. So, I mean, I arrived here writing about the climate crisis, honestly, because of poetry. It isn't like I chose it. It's more so like my journey in poetry just to begin with, as a Black person kind of led me there. And And I think that's kind of similar for like a lot of people, even people on this panel, it sounds like. I also write nonfiction. Like the book I'm working on is nonfiction, so I write prose. And I also engage with like teaching creative writing and teaching poetry and essay writing, so people can kind of embark on their own journeys through language, the history of language and the language that they use. And if you look up like the etymology of climate and the etymology of crisis, there's these really rich, these words come from really rich origins, and they travel a path through history that's really rich. And if you pay attention to it, kind of expands our view of thinking of it. The intersectionality and the wide scope of those words, climate and crisis, they're already built. Intersections are already built into those words. So yeah, poet first, and I teach essays and poetry elsewhere.
Kevin, you want to hop in? Or no? No pressure, no pressure. Just if you want to, it's here for you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll hop in. So yeah, I think my journey with poetry is also fairly recent. I grew up as an orator, right? From my Samoan side, I have a history of like talking chiefs in my family. And so it's been a practice that's been like kind of built into what I've done. And then I did some speech and debate like competitively through high school and college. And it's always been my preferred form of like communication and art. I think not enough people think about public speaking as an art form, right? They think of it as like a chore or an activity, but it's something that I really enjoy. And that's what kind of pushed me towards climate activism. And I didn't start writing until actually like 2.5 years ago. I was at a training in Australia, and folks were talking about their interests. And I was like, all right, I was just trying to come up with something. Everybody was so creative. I was like, yeah, right. They're like, what do you write? And I was like, poetry. And they're like, okay, let's write poetry. And I was like, oh, wow. So I'm here now and I got to write. And I think it was the most encouraging writing space that I've ever been to, because I think I had wanted to write before, wanted to write poetry, and had started here and there throughout my life, but always felt really stifled by this like standard I was imposing on myself. I was like, this doesn't sound good enough, throw the page away, go play a game. But being in that environment and starting to think of writing and poetry as a communal experience and not just this individual experience really helped me start to find the words. I think like poetry is so beautiful because you're able to say things to capture feelings, right? Like there are so many words that we lack for feelings that we feel in our body, feel in our spirits, things that have been passed down to us that we can't articulate in a way that's academic or educational or conforms to the way that people want us to communicate things. And so when we can play with these words, it feels very similar to me, like when you're watching a movie and they have this very emotional sequence, but there's all these abstract images that's capturing this feeling. That's what poetry is, right? That's what it's like listening to y'all, hearing the words blend in a way that speaks in ways we don't normally speak. So I think that's kind of what brought me to, this poetry journey, and just love the words, right? Words are so important. And something I always tell people is that no two words mean the same thing, or else we wouldn't have two words for it, right? And so trying to hear different words in different combinations is like, it gives me life, gives me energy.
Oh man, y'all, this is so beautiful. As y'all were talking, I was thinking about poetry and how even if it's spoken word and it's full of like anger or just like passion, or even if you come in as someone, there's something that is so like still kind of intimate and like conversational about it that like invites folks into that call and response. My brain is just chewing on everything right now. And so my articulation, but that's the thing too about poetry. It's like you get to take that time to digest everything. And what you were saying about Kevin, about no two words being the same, and just, taking that time to be like, wait a minute, if I were to put a word to this feeling, or if I were to paint this picture, like how do I do that? And I can identify with that as a writer myself. It's hard for me sometimes in a freestyle cipher to really, capture how I'm feeling because of that practice of like, no, wait, no, this is really what is going to articulate this moment and this feeling. Anyway, woo! Okay, so we are down to the last question, the last round of the evening. I don't want it to end personally. Selfishly, I have written down 5 other questions, but we don't have enough time for that. But this is why we want all of y'all who are attending the conference, who are tapping in, to follow these artists and figure out how to resource them. What does it really look like to, make sure that they can continue doing the good work that they're doing in our community, making sure that they get compensated, making sure that people in your circle know their name, know their work, know where to follow them, like and comment on everything, get that algorithm popping on any social media platform. So what we're going to do now is just go around, tell us what you're working on right now that you want folks to know about, because I know there's probably more in the works. If you already said it, repeat it again, and then tell folks where they can find you. Where can they tap in with you? How can they support you?
I can start us off. What's up, y'all? My name is Kweku Obimbola. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at KWXKU_. I'm working on my first chapbook. Is coming out in May, so I'm working on that. My first full manuscript of poetry is coming out next April. The first book talks about elegies and kind of like highlights Ghanaian forms of elegizing, which kind of focus on the life of the person rather than their death. And the next book kind of talks about kind of what I said in my last little bit, Black dance and its ties to ecology. So yeah, and I love diasporic reconnections, especially. I think that's what I endeavor to write towards in my poetry.
Everyone's so polite here. I'm just like trying to not. I can go. I'm Ashia Ajani. You can find me. Twitter and Instagram are the same. Ashia, ASHIA in Bloom. You can also follow me on my website, Ashia Ajani, ASHIAAJANI.com. And I have a forthcoming full-length collection, spring 2023. So Kweku, you and I actually might be having so we should talk about maybe doing some readings or something together. But I'm hoping that my book is going to be in Aries. Hoping. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's me.
I can hop in. I'm not on social media like that, but just to put it out there, Anaya Butler 23, ANIYABTLER 23. What I recommend doing is just following Youth versus Apocalypse on our social media platforms. So Youth versus Apocalypse on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and Facebook, and also our website, youthversusapocalypse.org. It's just VS for all of them. So, yeah. And in terms of work, probably going to be hosting a few readings with Chapter 510 in the spring. So Poetry Slam for Youth here in Oakland. So excited for that, and hopefully I can get back to some writing for myself as an individual. But yeah.
Yeah, I kind of use social media. You can find me on Instagram and on the Facebook at Kevin Ipopo. It's first name, last name. Last name's AIPOPO. And for now, I'm just writing. I'm just letting it all come together. And if it births a collection or anything in that, I'll keep y'all updated. But just taking it one poem at a time right now.
I'm Bernard Ferguson. I am, I really like the question you asked, like who you are, because that prompted me to like think about like what I'm trying to do in my work, which is be a bridge between island nations and like developed nations, and because we are in danger and we're disappearing, and we like action needs to be taken like yesterday if our nations are going to be surviving in the next like decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. And so my work is like rooted in that. And so yeah, I'm working on a book about climate change and hurricanes and small island states. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Project Nard. So the word project and then the last 4 letters of my name, NARD, Project Nard. And yeah, reach out if you ever get like questions or if you ever want to like debate about climate change. I'm really interested in like just talking one-on-one to people so we can like kind of just more, we need to talk more, you know, and yeah, share ideas. And so yeah, anybody in the audience who watches this or even the panelists, you know, let's stay in touch, you know, and just, you know, reach out if you're feeling it ever.
Thank you so very much to each of you for bringing yourselves, for taking this on, you know, both in your creativity and your work in the community. And yeah, I'm just real grateful to have been here with y'all and really looking forward to digging into your work, all of your work. Big shout out to Anaya Butler, to Kweku, to Bernard, Ferguson, to Kevin Ipopo, to Ashia Johnny, to Aya de Leon.
Yes. Oh my God. Woo. We did it. We shared our vision for how Black literature can inspire Black people and really everyone to join the movement for climate justice and win. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're a writer or even have the slightest inclination to write something about the climate emergency, do it. Don't wait. Don't waste any time worrying that you don't have what it takes. Don't nobody have time for that? If anything, it's the opposite. My next project will be figuring out how to publish more climate justice stories and to get them out to readers sooner than ever before, to share this vision of winning climate justice as widely as possible. If you're watching on our premiere day, April 5th, please join us for our Zoom after party. We'll be doing a live Q&A with some of the presenters and talking about how you can get involved in arts and activism to fight for climate justice. Details can be found on the conference webpage, ayadeleon.com/BLvCE. And if you're watching the video after the launch date, please check that same webpage for current events and opportunities to get involved. Meanwhile, I have so many people to thank. This conference was made possible by the generous participation of our incredible presenters. We put this conference together on a shoestring budget. Thank you to our funders, to the many people who advised and counseled me, but above all, thank you to Alicia Raquel Morales, my ace on this project, the best collaborator ever, the production and video genius behind the scenes making it all happen, and working from such a gracious and generous vision of wanting to make the world right. I cannot possibly express my gratitude, sis. To everyone else, see you at the after party, or hopefully in the movement for climate justice.
Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? So-called hot earth heating up. We too busy surviving and in a rush. Braiding sweetgrass reeds to love a place is not enough. So away gone the. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we are gonna lift our voices and shift something.
I know
it's hard to pay attention. Gotta get the money, pay the bills, and rent is tempting to check out. But we gotta come tap in. This our mama that we talking about, the odds are stacked in. So what? Ain't a problem we can't solve. It's time to show up, time to rise, we seen the fall. Felt the bottom, tasted the rage and the discouragement. Had to take all the mistreatment and we hurting this. Not an alternative, but to turn and face the world we living in. Baby, it's burning and it's burning quick. But we learning shit, and I'm certain it's worth working to heal up the planet and make a lasting shift. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Same solutions to climate change could help end oppression. Picture no racism, sexism, classism pressing. Down and separated movements taking lives of people. That world we could build it, one that's fully peaceful. Red, black, and green New Deal. Black people's climate agenda, we finna make it real. Transforming water, energy, and land, it's time to heal. Shifting labor, economy, democracy gon' be our legacy. Them corporations hella greedy, why they tryna master truth? Frontline communities hit the hardest, look at the proof. How 40 to 70% of COVID deaths is black when we 22% of the pop. Do the math, but there's power in the people, 99 to 1. Simple, not easy, we could win it. We just begun, we facing down history. This humanity's biggest threat, but there's beauty in the battle, baby. It ain't over yet, yeah. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something. Whose world is this? Whose world is this one? You, me, we all gon' lift our voices and shift something.